Hey, everybody, welcome to Odd and Untold, the podcast where we talk about all things strange and spooky. This is our last episode right before Christmas. So, once again, this year I have my friend John here. We're going to talk about some Christmas holiday movies. We did an episode last year. We were just talking about this off air. That was episode 28,
Yeah, it was episode 28,
and this
and
is
this is going to be
episode
78.
78. So, yeah, I mean, makes sense. A year later, 52 weeks. I took 2 weeks off when I was sick
Yeah,
last in January.
mhm.
So that brings us to like a year later. So that
Here we
was
are a year later.
that one was Christmas movies of the spooky kind.
Yeah, Christmas movies of the spooky kind.
Cool. And
And
then
we talked about a lot of films that time. I think we're going to talk about fewer films this time, but we'll see. Who knows?
yeah, yeah. And last time it was more like mainstream stuff. It was a lot of it was really just Christmas movies with because Christmas and I mentioned this in last week's episode, Christmas and ghosts just kind of go together
Yeah,
pretty well. I mean, Charles Dickens and um just the supernatural, It's a Wonderful Life and uh Ghost of Christmas Past and Yet to Come and things like that. So it's just and the whole thing with like Santa Claus, it's just kind of like this magical
yeah,
uh supernatural, if you will, not necessarily scary, but it's kind of this ethereal, spooky kind of season. And so for this year's episode, we're going a little bit more on the horror side and like less mainstream strictly Christmas. I mean, A Christmas Carol is a Christmas movie. It is, it's in the title. It's not like Die Hard where you can kind of argue over whether it's a Christmas movie or not. And we can talk about that at some point too, because I have my thoughts
oh
on that one.
yeah, of course, and we will.
Yeah, but these are more like horror movies versus like what we talked about last year, which was more of like Christmas movies with that supernatural tinge to it, which, and most of them
Yeah,
I think were more wholesome. Like I said, it was like Christmas Carol and It's a Wonderful Life, and even Gremlins. I mean, it's got some dark moments, but it's overall a very sort of lighthearted movie.
yeah, based in family and a small neighborhood, and everyone's celebrating Christmas, and everything's decorated with Christmas trees and wreaths and lights and things like that. So it does have that very wholesome feeling. Even last year we talked about Krampus, it's the same sort of thing. I mean, satire against the commercialization of the holiday is there, of course, but everything looks nice, and there's a lot of snow on the ground and things like that. But yeah,
Yeah.
with a Christmas Carol, you can't get past that. There's some sort of supernatural element to it, and I think we talked about seven versions of Charles Dickens' story. There's a lot of different versions we talked about.
Yeah. I mean, this has been done so many times and so many variations from cartoons to Muppets to just very serious adaptations and musicals. And
That Muppets one is really good, by the way, if you haven't seen it.
yeah, I watched a few of them I watched last year. I watched the Mickey Christmas Carol
I love that one.
because I hadn't seen that since I was like a kid, but I watched
Yeah.
that one after we talked about it, and I watched the Muppet one, and Michael Caine just plays that
Oh,
totally serious, like
yeah. And he's surrounded by ridiculous
yeah,
Muppets
yeah,
the
but
entire time.
he's acting as if he's on stage in like the London Theater District. It's just
So serious about it.
yeah, yeah, um,
This was after, of course, the fiasco that was Jaws 4,
right,
and he really needed to develop some credibility.
yeah, um, which we also talked about Jaws for in our Fourth of July movies episode.
Yeah, episode 54, Fourth of July horror movies.
Hmm.
So all of these movies are somehow connected. I'm going to be talking about a lot of further connections once we get into it. So
All right,
whenever you're
cool.
ready.
Yeah, so let's start with the first one, and you again you did the work for this one. I have to give you credit. Like you compiled the list, you did all the notes. So I just watched some of the movies that you recommended. So yeah, I'll
It's
let you.
hardly work, I have to say, because I love watching movies. I need some sort of excuse sometimes so people don't think that I have some sort of problem because I watch so many films and just really, really love it.
Yeah, yeah,
So
but
actually, the first thing I wanted to do was I wanted to give a shout out to Kylie Roseanne. She has a YouTube channel. She actually has two YouTube channels. One of them is just Kylie Roseanne, and she talks about movies. She's a film major, a filmmaker, very young, 24, and she's just fantastic. Her main channel is called Haunted Hippie, and I love this channel. It's all horror movies all the time. You can tell that she really, really loves movies, and I think that comes from her family. Her grandfather got her into what she calls gateway horror, something like Gremlins. It's not technically a horror movie, but it's leading in that direction.
Hmm.
So she's great. And in watching some videos, including ones that she did with her dad, Matt, um, she introduced me to these films that I didn't know anything about. I'm not. It's not like I'm a hardcore Christmas horror movie junkie. But I was watching these shows. It's like, oh, well, let me check out this movie and this movie. And so I just wanted to thank Kylie Roseanne, otherwise known as Haunted Hippie, for the inspiration for some of these films.
Awesome. Yeah. And I'll link to her channel in the description below so everybody can go find her. And yeah, we love, promoting other good channels on here
Yeah,
when we
if
come
you like
across
horror
them.
movies, that's the right channel for you. She's just great.
Cool. Cool. Yeah. Because a lot of these, like we were saying last year, was a lot of mainstream stuff. And this year,
Yeah,
I mean, I think with two exceptions, I had never heard of any of these.
right. This is more of a deep dive. She loves to do these deep dives. And last year, I mean, you people know about Gremlins, even if you've never seen it, or something like Silent Night, Deadly Night. People know that, or even Krampus, because that was like a major theatrical release.
Hmm.
People know A Christmas Carol, even if they haven't seen all these different versions. This is our deep dive.
Yeah.
So speaking of deep dive, the first one is super, super interesting to me. It's called To All a Good Night, and it's a film from 1980. And I would classify it as a slasher. And this is one that I introduced you to, and we both watched this one for the first time this year in anticipation of doing this
Right.
episode.
Right.
So, basic premise: during Christmas break, a group of finishing school girls find themselves being stalked by a man in a Santa Claus suit. Now, I don't know if this is the first, but this is definitely one of the first times where we see an evil Santa doing terrible things. Now, last year we talked about Silent Night, Deadly Night, and of course that's the premise of that film, that there's someone who is doing terrible things dressed up as Santa Claus. But that's from 1984, and this is from 1980, and there's actually another film that we're going to be talking about also from 1980. So this predates a much larger, widely known film. So I thought that's one of the reasons why this was interesting. And for me, it seems like a clear attempt to mimic Black Christmas, Bob Clark's movie from 1974, which is a great movie in and of itself, and really established a lot of things that were going to come in the future. Probably inspired John Carpenter's 1978 Halloween. And this feels at different points like a sort of off-brand. Sorry, guys, who made the film? Sort of off-brand Black Christmas, because Black Christmas is just done. It has better acting, it has better set design, it has almost everything is better, but it doesn't have a murderous Santa, and this one does. So that's what makes this one really particularly unique.
Yeah, and this one it just takes place. It's a typical sort of like late 70s, early 80s horror movie thing. It takes place at a girls' was it like a boarding school or a
A
college
finishing
finishing
school,
school. Okay.
if
Um,
anyone understands what that is.
yeah, I not
I'm still
really.
a bit unclear, having seen the film and looked it up. It's like, oh,
Because
is
none
it
of
a
these
high
girls
school?
are
Is it a
are
college? What is it?
yeah. Um, but yeah, it's like an all girls finishing school, and there's an accident, and then there's a vengeful Santa going after the girls on Christmas, and this takes place in California, and it's aside from Santa, and I think there's like one doorway on the building that has like this very thin, pathetic string of Christmas lights around it.
Oh,
It's
it's
kind of like
it's yeah.
Charlie Brown Christmas lights just around the front door. But aside from that, you'd never know it was Christmas. Like the interiors are not really decorated much.
No.
It's in California, which again, I understand the West Coast does have Christmas and warmer climates do have Christmas, Florida and all that, but You don't really get that Christmas vibe of like snow and chilly weather. It's just California teens doing their California stuff and this little tiny string of lights around the door. And yeah, the murderous Santa.
Yeah, I
Uh,
mean, if not for the murderous Santa, it could have been any number of different slasher films,
yeah.
especially around that time.
Hmm.
So, Black Christmas was filmed in Toronto in the winter, so there's already snow on the ground. So you have that feeling of Christmas, and the set design in that film, there are Christmas trees and lights and things like that. It really, really feels like Christmas. This does not feel like Christmas. It was filmed in Santa Barbara, California, and it actually feels like a little bit more like a different slasher. It feels like a Halloween H2O from '98 because that is also set in, I guess, this type of school and that type of environment.
Hmm.
And that certainly, obviously, is not about Christmas, but it has more of that. It just feels that way, you know. There's no leaves on the ground, nothing. And I know
Yeah.
Halloween was filmed in California, but at least they made the effort of getting the leaves and uh, making it feel really like fall.
Right. It's got that stereotypical autumn
Yeah.
Halloween feel. Um, and again, like I said, I understand that places like this do have Christmas or fall, and they don't necessarily have that look like we do up here in the Northeast or the Northwest. But
Depending on what
this,
continent you are on. Yeah.
yeah, but this movie just does not feel very Christmassy. A little bit, but
Yeah. I mean,
that's
it's a little bit there.
yeah, a little bit. Um, but yeah, very very sort of like I said, late 70s, early 80s, slasher, exploitative, women getting topless and being murdered and who's the real killer and twists and turns and uh but I thought it was good. I mean, I love the campy, cheesy horror movies, the B movies. I mean, you know this. I grew up on like Mystery Science Theater 3000 and
Oh, yeah.
and to
You
this day,
introduced me to Mystery Science Theater 3000.
yeah,
Yeah.
and to this day, Jake and I, my son, like we'll just find bad movies on the weekend and watch like bad horror movies. We'll just go to like Tubi
Yeah.
or Amazon Prime and just like let's just find like, this terrible Bigfoot movie or this terrible movie about a haunted house. And it's just, if we can even manage to get through them, but we'll laugh at them. And, but I kind of dig stuff like that. And this one's decent for what it is. It's far from the worst horror movie I've ever seen, but
Yeah. I think we'll get to those in a second.
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I give this one points for a lot of reasons. Now, like I said, it does feel like an off-brand Black Christmas. It definitely feels like it was inspired a little bit by Halloween, but it predates some of the slashers that would really, really become popular later on in the '80s, like Friday the 13th. So, not to give anything away, although these movies have been available for over 40 years. Um, Halloween, sorry, Friday the 13th has a very particular, a couple of things that make it very unique in the genre. And you see that come up into All a Good Night. And of course, Friday the 13th came out after. Same thing with Prom Night. There's certain elements that you see in that, and that came out in the summer, July of 1980, and this came out in January of 1980. So it is predating a couple things, and just for those reasons alone, I have to give it extra points. And it's not a great film, but it is certainly a cheesy B movie that I enjoyed watching and I might watch again.
Yeah, and like you said, I mean, there, for anybody who hasn't seen this movie and they watch it and they don't really know their chronology, they're going to
Yeah.
watch this and there's going to be certain scenes where they're going to be like, they ripped off Friday the 13th, and they
Yeah.
didn't because
And
this
they
was
didn't.
first. So
Same thing. Oh, Prom Night. Yeah, because people love Jamie Lee Curtis and she's in it, so they probably have seen that movie and they're like, "Oh, yeah, this is ripping that off." And it's like it's not.
yeah, so yeah, very very serviceable horror movie. Again, not extremely Christmassy, but it technically is a Christmas themed horror movie. You got the one row of lights, the one little string of lights.
I think there's also one Christmas tree, just one,
Yeah, it
I
might be like a
think.
blink and you miss it sort of thing, like in the
Yeah, it's like
background.
in the
But
main hall, maybe.
yeah, and like
That
one of the
that's it.
characters kind of wears red, and
Right.
I mean, I'm really reaching here because I'm wearing red and like a
Yeah.
Christmas outfit. No, it's just a red hoodie. But
Yeah, no,
um,
there's not a big Christmas feel to this one.
yeah, but it's good. It's a good like if you just want to turn your brain off and watch a slasher film that
Yeah, and
is
one that
also
you've never seen before. I mean, I love slashers and I'm all about watching the classics, and I had never heard of this one.
yeah, me
And then
neither.
doing a little research, it's like, oh my God, this actually came out before these other films, and yet it has these elements. So it's innovative in a way.
Hmm.
And like you said, if you don't know your chronology, you're like, oh, this is completely derivative. And it actually isn't.
Right.
So
Yeah.
crazy.
So we recommend this one. This one I would say give it a shot if you like campy, cheesy 1980s
Yeah, not
slasher
entirely well
flicks.
produced
Yeah,
slashers.
yeah, but it's
Check it
perfectly. I mean,
out.
there's some really bad like special effects moments,
Yeah.
um, where it's like clearly a dummy or a
Yeah.
mannequin, and it's like, but you just laugh at it because it's just like you have to. Um,
Yeah, and I think this was a step because you see Friday the 13th and Prom Night later, they have bigger budgets.
mhm.
They have stuntmen, they have wonderful, especially towards the middle of the 80s, wonderful effects artists. So the kills look, I mean, obviously, that they're fake, but there's artistry to the makeup effects and to the killing and things like that. And this film does not have any of those things.
No.
It does not have any of those things. Um, but it does have some interesting things. I would love to see a remake of this. And I'm not all about remakes, especially of the classics, but this isn't a classic. It has a lot of good ideas. So to see an upgrade, I'd really be into that for
Yeah,
this film.
yeah, definitely.
All right, our second film, speaking of exploitation, oh my God, I can't even believe it. This one is called Don't Open It Till Christmas. And if you just open it up on Amazon or whatever streaming, you're going to see a woman who's sort of dressed as Santa Claus. And depending on where you are, in jolly old England, where I am, you will actually see her completely topless on the cover. If you see it in America, you see they just digitally moved to cover certain parts of her body. And it's like, okay, this is the image that these filmmakers, and no offense, because I have not made the films that I want to make. I write films. I don't know that they're ever going to be read by anyone other than me and you. Thank you for reading that one screenplay that I wrote. But this is the image that they wanted to put out to the world. It's like, yeah, check this out. And of course, some people are going to see it and they're going to be like, yeah, I want to watch this one. And that's not the reason that I chose this. That's why I mentioned Hot Tip Hippie before, because she mentioned it. Don't open till Christmas. This one is set in London, and that's why it was near and dear to my heart um, in the beginning. And apparently, there's a serial killer who's murdering anyone dressed as Santa Claus, and they're usually some sort of degenerate, like drug dealer or something, some disreputable person, and he's going around murdering people. Now, this is actually kind of similar to the other one that I wanted to mention, um, which is, let's see, Christmas Evil. And oh my God. When I was doing the research for this, I wrote up a traumatized toy factory worker runs amok dressed as Santa Claus. The less said about this one, the better. So I'm not exactly sure which one of these two films is worse. So that's where we are right now. But
Yeah.
again, they all feature some sort of person either being someone going around killing Santa Clauses or someone dressed as Santa Claus going around killing other people. So there's a gruesomeness to these films. Uh, I don't know how I feel about them yet. Frankly, I don't. But I have to say this one does get points because there is a more of a Christmas feel to it. Obviously, there's lots of people dressed up as Santa Claus, including the young woman on the cover, who's featured in the film. But you also see shots of Piccadilly Circus. You see the London Dungeon Wax Museum. and it's of course in the wintertime, and there's decorations. At one point, there's a street performance of a brass band playing
Hmm.
Christmas songs. I mean, so that stuff like that, it feels like Christmas. So you have to give it some points. And
Yeah, and
all of them kind of. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. So it even opens like with a Christmas party. Like that's kind of
Yeah.
so you do get that feel of like, oh, they're at a Christmas party and everyone's kind of dressed up Christmassy, and
Mhm.
so right away you know it's Christmas. You don't need like little caption at the bottom saying December 24th. Like,
Yeah, like
you know,
something else we're going to mention
yeah,
at the end of this. Right. It has that Christmas feel. So you don't really see that in To All a Good Night, just that string of lights and stuff like that. But Christmas Evil and Don't Open Till Christmas, you definitely know it's Christmas time. No one needs to tell you. People
right,
are dressed for the season, not just Santa Claus, in their clothing, in their decorations. Um, so I don't know about recommending either one of these two, but if you're really bored, you like cheesy horror movies from the early 80s, I mean, check them out. And I mean, there's other interesting things too, because they have like cheesy 80s synth scores, and no one does that better than John Carpenter. And I'm not calling his work cheesy, by the way. I mean, I love John Carpenter's soundtracks and his musical compositions, but the people who were scoring these movies are not John
right,
Carpenter,
right.
you know. But they are certainly inspired by that, and I get that, you know. I can imagine myself doing something similar. It's like, oh, I'm going to try to make this sound like Halloween and fail miserably. But I get the impulse, in honoring him and his work.
Yeah, and I mean a lot of movies were like that. Like you had so many of these old movies that had the synth soundtracks, and most of them are just terrible and throwaway. But yeah, you have John Carpenter with Halloween. You have like the original Terminator
Oh
theme,
yeah.
which
Hmm.
I mean most people watch T2 now, and it's more orchestral and it's really well done. But you go back and watch the original Terminator, and it just sounds like it's done on a Casio, little
And
cheap
I'm
Casio
sure
key.
it was, and
It
it
probably
was just
was.
cheaper. I mean, how can you hire an entire orchestra or a composer or anything like that? It's like, well, we need music.
Right.
You have your Casio keyboard, and you just compose some themes.
Right. And just some people, doesn't matter how expensive the equipment is, they can just write a good piece of music. And like John Carpenter did, and
It's just amazing
the
stuff.
composer for Terminator did, and the rest of
Hmm.
it is not necessarily as good. And yeah, this one, it's also cheesy and campy, but I think it takes itself a lot more seriously than, um, I'm sorry, I forget what the first movie was even called.
All right, we just watched it. To All a
To
Good
All a
Night.
Good Night.
That's the first one we were talking about.
Yeah, that one it has fun with itself, like it knows
Oh
what it
yeah,
is. It knows
yeah.
exactly what it is, and it doesn't try to be anything more. And it's an exploitative slasher flick, and that's all it is. And this one, Do Not Open Till Christmas, is it's a little bit more. It takes itself a little bit more seriously, I think.
Oh, it
Um,
does. It was directed by Edmund Purdom. I think that's how you say his name. An English actor, stage actor. He's the director and the star.
right.
He's the lead detective on the case, and he took it very seriously. So much so that at one point in the production, he didn't feel that they were allowing him to convey his artistic expression, so he quit.
Oh,
And then they
really?
had to continue with a different director. They rewrote some of the scenes, and that wasn't working out. So then they allowed him to come back and finish the film. So yeah, you're absolutely right. He took this very seriously, and it's not a great film. But you can see that um, this isn't just like a throwaway. It certainly wasn't a throwaway for him. He wanted to make a good film. I don't know that he did, because he just didn't have the right people, maybe.
Hmm.
The score is not very good. The editing is not very good. Some of the cinematography is okay, but it's the way I put it. I said that the editing is awkward enough to say that this was probably done by film students, but that would give film students a bad name. Uh, yeah, that's how I
Yeah,
felt
and
about this film.
yeah, because it takes itself very seriously, but it's also very cheesy, and the special effects I mean, some of the blood effects. I mean, we all know when it's fake blood, but
Yeah,
we also know like when this is just really just it takes you out of the moment because it's so fake looking. And
yeah. And
some
Hammer films love, especially of the 60s and the 70s, they love their blood. And you know it's fake. I mean, nothing looks like that, but there's something when you film it, it actually looks fantastic. You
right.
know, it's obviously not real blood, but there's some sort of craft there.
Yeah, and this just looked cheap in a lot of places.
Yeah,
Just didn't it was the wrong color, it was the wrong consistency.
yeah,
It changed from shot to shot. Like it was just like you said, bad editing.
yeah,
Uh and yeah, like there's uh, supposed to be like this real deep meaning behind the killings and it just kind of farts out at the end, and it's like, okay, and it's like, all
yeah,
right. Um, and again, I think you could make a very serious horror movie about this, a serial killer who's killing people dressed as Santa.
yeah. Oh yeah, I would definitely, I would definitely watch like a remake of this for sure.
Yeah, someone just more talented at making films, like cohesive.
Yeah, like a whole team
Yeah, and
of people who really love this genre.
yeah, and this one, and it doesn't surprise me that you said that he kind of left the project for a bit and then came back. And again, I don't know how much of that remained from when he was
Right.
gone,
Yeah.
but there is some meandering and some
Hmm.
unevenness in this, and you could just be like, cut that. Like, why is this even in the film? Cut this out. Like it went nowhere, or this didn't need to be a 6 minute scene. Like this could have been 2 minutes or a minute and a half, and like
Yeah,
there's a
it's
lot of
like
fat on it, and
you don't see him, but you see the other detective on the case. It's like, what is this about? It's like,
yeah,
who's
with
the
no
star of this movie?
explanation.
Right. No explanation. It's like, what's going on here?
Yeah, so it just has these little elements to it that jar you out of your little suspension of disbelief for the hour and a half you're supposed to do that.
Yeah, it's
'Cause
thankfully short.
it
All of
is
these
short.
actually are under an hour and a half, which is fantastic.
Yeah. Um, but
But yeah, it does jar you out of it sometimes. It's like, what?
yeah.
Which is
Uh,
never something that a filmmaker wants to do. You know, you have to suspend your disbelief gleefully, go along for the ride. And you can still do that, but you're like, oh man, what is happening here?
yeah, you don't want anything that's going to knock the viewer back into reality and being like, what's going on here? Or that's
Yeah.
so fake, like we all know it's fake. We all know people aren't really being killed on film, but give us something that looks a little bit more realistic and or give us a reason why this lead detective who's the star of the movie just disappears for, the middle portion of it.
Yeah, and a fairly well respected London actor. That's like, where did he go? What is happening now? Yeah. So it's unfortunate the final product, but it's like the bones of a house. It has good structure. So if someone could take these ideas and remake it, I think it would be really worthwhile.
Yeah, it could be a really interesting movie.
Yeah.
So yeah, much more Christmassy, but a little less evenly done than To All a Good Night, I
Right.
think.
Then the other two, right.
Yeah.
Those are clearly even,
Hmm.
especially Christmas Evil, which I'm not a big fan of. That is definitely, I don't want to say done well, but it's evenly done. And this one is jaggedly done,
Yeah, well,
if
I
that
think
makes
if
any
you're gonna
sense.
if you're gonna do a cheesy movie, just go in on the cheese. If you're gonna do a serious
Yeah.
movie, you got to go in on the seriousness. This one, it kind of bounces between like real serious, dramatic tension, and then it just goes into like real kind of silly murders and blood and scenes that just yeah, it's uneven. So it's like
Yeah.
pick one, either do the serious or do the silly kind of campy thing, but you can't really have both. It doesn't really work in this example.
Right. The tonal shifts
Right.
are just too jarring.
Right.
Yeah. So speaking of tonal shifts, now we're going to enter into modern mashups. So the first movie I'm going to talk about for the first 20 minutes, you would think that this movie was like a dark comedy, a black comedy, very similar in the vein of Bad Santa, starring Billy Bob Thornton from 2003. And then it changes into an action home invasion heist film. And what I'm talking about is like, oh my God, can you mash those up together? And of course, it's a Christmas film all at the same time. Let's not forget that. The film I'm referring to is called Violent Night, and I have to say, I love this movie. I'm going to watch this movie every Christmas, and maybe sometimes that aren't Christmas.
Yeah, this one had a lot of buzz when it came out.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
I
everybody
missed
was
it
talking
last
about
year
it.
for some reason.
Yeah, so did I. I think it was one of those things where it was like it had come to streaming, but it was you had to pay for it, and I don't know if I even had the right streaming service. Like I was like, I'll get it another time.
Yeah, and then it's not the season anymore.
Right, you don't want to watch this in, March. So uh just not my thing. But yeah, this one was really, really well done, really good. Uh I think they could have trimmed a little bit. It was a little.
Yeah, this is the longest one on this entire list. All the other films are under an hour and a half, I think, and this one is an hour and 52 minutes. So this is the longest one.
Yeah, they easily could have cut 15 minutes from this, maybe even 20, and it
And
would
made
have
it
been
feel like a little speedier,
a
a
little
little,
speedier, a little tighter, because the stuff that
yeah.
was in there was really just like beating a dead horse sort of stuff, that didn't really need to be expounded upon. I mean, again, this is one of those movies where it's just, uh, it, I think it does the balance between the serious
Yeah.
and the silly very well,
Yes,
because
I
you
agree.
have this sort of, you have people getting murdered, being shot in the head. Um,
Yeah, it's called Violent Night for a reason, folks. So just be aware of that before you go into this.
right. This is a violent movie. Um, it's part action movie and part, like you said, like black comedy, because but yeah, and then it's like it's got Santa Claus and he's got magical powers and he's really Santa Claus. So it's just,
Yeah. And
um,
I have to say, if another film that's not a horror movie, and this, obviously isn't a horror movie either, but there's just so much violence and gore that it almost fits into that category. It's a film from a few years back called The Christmas Chronicles with Kurt Russell. I love The Christmas Chronicles, and I love Kurt Russell, and he's like this magical Santa who can do all these things. And this is the closest I've seen to that, where it's Santa. It's like, as you say, it is really Santa, and he does have magic. And that's just awesome to see. And in this case, he's using that magic to help this family, which isn't a great family, but they still apparently love each other very much, and he's trying to help them. And he's a badass because I have to say it is played by David Harbour of Stranger Things, Jim Hopper himself as Santa Claus, fighting to protect these people. And anytime I get to see Jim Hopper protecting people, I'm watching that because he's amazing.
he did this so well. I mean, he played just like this jaded Santa Claus who's just like, like John McClane, just like, come on, man, I just want to do Christmas. And
Yeah,
now you're dragging me into this, you know?
right. He wants no part of it. He tries to get away. He tries to sneak away, but it's his conscience that's like, oh my God, I can't. Well, I can't leave them here. And
Yeah, and it's just this like rich, entitled, privileged family who's
and they're awful. They are
they're
just
awful, awful
awful.
people. And the matriarch is Beverly D'Angelo.
Who I love
I
and who
love
is
her.
in Christmas Vacation from 1989. And she in that movie, she's always beautiful. She looked gorgeous in that film, and she's so funny. And she was one of the reasons to watch those early Christmas Vacation movies because she's just so good. And then she's in this one. It's like, oh my God, this is amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
she's a terrible person.
terrible person. Her daughter's a terrible person. Her daughter's boyfriend's a terrible person. Her
Oh,
grandson's a terrible person.
the grandson is awful,
Yeah,
just awful.
just awful people. But yeah,
So you're
but
not really rooting for them. But Santa is a good guy, and he's been doing this for a long time, and he's jaded, and he really just wants to help people. He doesn't like that people for Christmas are asking for video games, which are usually very violent, which is kind of interesting because this movie is so violent. Uh, and money. because people have lost that Christmas spirit, and he doesn't like that, but he's still doing the job, and he really finds this is his arc is that he discovers how important Christmas is. He remembers why he's doing this job, and I love that.
Yeah, and it's like I mentioned, it's a huge homage to like Die Hard. There's a
Yeah,
short sequence that's like an homage to Home Alone, which they put right in your face. I mean, you could see it coming a mile away, but
yeah. There's
it's
no mistaking it.
there's no mistaking it, but it is so good. Because yeah, it's like Home Alone, but it's turned to 11. It's just
Yeah,
violent, much more violent. I mean, not that Home Alone wasn't violent because it was, but
but you don't. I mean, I forget what channel did it. I think it was Screen Junkies. They have a special series called By the Numbers, and they do something that's called instant death. So I think they did it with the Home Alone movies, and it's like, okay, if this happens to someone, they would die,
right.
or their brain would explode, or whatever. Um, and this one, you actually get to see it, and it's a little girl in this one. I think she's 11, and she's just having fun, kind of like Kevin McAllister from Home Alone. But you actually see what happens to these people; they actually get hurt, and it's just so funny and hysterical
Yeah.
because she's just trying to defend herself and her family too, just like
Yeah.
Kevin was.
Yeah, so great homages there. And like I said, Santa's kind of like the John McClane character, just, you know,
Absolutely.
a reluctant hero. Um, but it's just so good. And it's just, I mean, it's silly. It's not going to win Academy Awards,
Nope.
for anything. But David Harbour again plays it really well. Um, as this like jaded Santa who reluctantly has to save the day. And
Like
yeah,
a jaded sheriff who reluctantly has to save the day. I mean,
yeah.
he's got it down to a science. He's just so good, and it doesn't feel like he's repeating himself either. It's
No,
just
no.
it's authentic because he's a great actor.
But yeah, this is just kind of John Wick meets Christmas Vacation meets Home Alone meets, it's just a good amalgam. It takes a whole bunch of different genres and mashes them up and does it well.
Yeah,
And like I said, it could have stood a little bit of trimming down, maybe bring it closer to an hour and a half because there are some sequences that just go on a little bit long. But I mean, that's the only real complaint I have. I mean, I think all the actors did a good job. The action is really good. The fights are really good. The humor is great. I mean, I found myself laughing a lot.
yeah,
So really good movie. This one is highly recommended. You have to watch this. Like
highly recommended.
add this to your Christmas viewing because this one's really good.
Your watch list every year.
Yeah, this
Of
one's
course,
amazing.
if you like action movies. Oh, one more thing, because I want to give John Leguizamo a shout out. He's in this, and he's the main bad guy. And he's tied in, of course, to Die Hard 2, which also takes place at Christmas time. Similar role and something with snowmobiles. So if you're a fan of his and you like, um, what did I say? Die Hard
Die
is
Hard
Die
2.
Hard 2. Die Hard 2. I'm sorry. Um, which is also great. It's not as great as the first one, but it certainly has its moments. And no one talks about that being a Christmas film, and it is
Yeah,
just like Die Hard. If you buy that those are Christmas films, they're certainly set around Christmas time.
yeah, and he
Die
does
Hard
a
2 has more of a feel to it because of the snow, I think.
mhm. Yeah, but he does a good job in this one too. He plays a real bad guy.
He's a real bad guy. Yeah.
Yeah, he's not like John Leguizamo.
Right.
Kind of like the like more we he plays like the Weasley character pretty well.
Oh, he does that very well.
Whether he's playing a good guy or a bad guy, he's usually kind of Weasley and slimy and a little cowardly. He's got the
Yeah.
bravado, but ultimately he's a coward. In this one,
Right.
he's not. He's just a bad dude in this one.
Yeah. He
I thought
does
he did
that
a
in a
good job.
handful of films. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think he did a great job. The whole cast was just fantastic.
Oh yeah, yeah. And again, they all played it really, really well. Like they all showed up. Nobody was phoning it in. Nobody was like,
No.
yeah, this is just a stupid comedy. I'm just gonna come do my lines. And like everybody in this film just like owned it and
Yeah.
ran with it and did a
Every
great job.
single there's no small role.
Yeah,
Only
even like
small
the
actors, as they say, and they were no small roles in this.
yeah, even like the henchmen were just like funny
Yeah.
and like they took their role seriously and like they had personality. What there was like no real just faceless henchmen, like
Right.
they were supposed to be, and they all kind of had like these funny Christmas nicknames, gingerbread and peppermint, and
Yeah.
but each one of them, like you knew exactly who each one was,
Mhm.
and that was great. Like there's just like these nameless generic henchmen, but they all had their own personalities, and they were all funny, and they all like brought something to it. It was just a really, really good film all around. I was really surprised by this one. I thought I'd
Yeah.
like it, but I didn't think I'd like it as much as I did.
Oh, same, same.
Yeah.
And another special shout out to Brian Adams, who sung "Christmas Time."
Oh yeah.
The song, if you don't know, is from 1985. You would never know it because it's produced so well. Um, and it's featured, all 4 minutes of it, I believe, are featured in this sequence that is just unbelievable. It's just, and I mean that in a good way. I mean, I don't want to give anything away, but it is just so well done.
It is. And good
It's so
special
well done.
effects. I mean, like, everything is just they didn't really skimp on anything. It's just a good
Yeah.
all-around movie.
The production values on this film are very good. Because they're a rich family, they have like a Christmas tree in every room, and they have lights and wreaths and all this. And some of the Christmas trees or decorations are used to very powerful effect in some of the sequences. So if this sounds like a movie for you, check it out. We
Yeah.
love it. I'm
Yeah.
gonna watch it every year. I actually watched it on streaming. I don't have the Blu-ray, but I'm going to order it probably right now
Yeah,
because it's so good.
this one's worth it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right. So speaking of modern mashups, there's another movie from 2016 called Better Watch Out, and this is also a home invasion film that turns it more into a psychological thriller. And this is another film that sort of references Home Alone. It's interesting. I think Home Alone, especially when it came out, I think we were too old. I don't know about you, but I was like too cool for school at that point. And Home Alone 2. I just skipped over them, and I had to sort of rediscover those films as an adult and as a parent. Um, but they had such a huge impact. I mean, it comes up in Violent Night, it comes up in Better Watch Out, and let me just tell you a little bit about Better Watch Out. So, basic premise: a teenage babysitter must protect her charges from a home invasion during the Christmas season. So, lots of Christmas decorations, very soft sort of lighting, snow on the ground. I mean, it really, really feels like Christmas. And then it just goes bonkers. Um, and this is one that you didn't see.
Yeah, I didn't have that time. I did not have time to watch it this week.
Yeah,
And I'm sorry, everybody. I've just been having a crazy week,
yeah,
and I tried to fit in as many of these movies because, again, like last year, I had seen most of the movies before. I didn't have to like rewatch them. I knew
right.
It's a Wonderful Life or A Christmas Carol. These are all new to me, so I'm watching them each for the first time. This one I didn't get to. I
Yeah,
kind
this
of,
is the deep dive.
yeah, I had to kind of choose certain movies to watch, and I picked and chose what I felt were more movies that I needed to see. This one, it
Yeah,
did sound like a little bit like Home Alone. Um, so I wanted to kind of expand my horizons a little bit and get away because I just watched Home Alone last weekend. So with Jake,
yeah.
and
I saw Home Alone too.
yeah, we'll probably do that one this weekend
Yeah, I love
because
that
I
one.
love both of them.
It does have a lot of that feel, but there's also lots of twists and turns in this one, and that's
Mhm.
that's why there's that psychological thriller element to it. So check it out. I think it's really well done, really worth watching. So if you
Mhm.
can fit it in sometime, definitely check it out.
Yeah, I'll get to them. Like I said, even after last year's episode, I stuff I hadn't seen or hadn't seen in a long time. I like have Christmas vacation. Let me start watching some of these when I have the time.
Yeah.
Because even I listen to our watch list. If
Yeah.
you're recommending something, I'm gonna go watch it. So,
Oh yeah, I did that with your Bigfoot movies. I forget what episode you did, but the Bigfoot movies that you did,
oh yeah.
I definitely saw Legend of Boggy Creek. I can't remember off the top of my head what else I saw, but I saw that remastered, the new
Hmm.
version that's out, and it looks gorgeous and it's great.
Yeah.
And I can understand why people think it's cheesy and stuff like that, but I think that's something that we should say about all of these films. These are just films that we like.
Right.
You know, it's not that we're saying that these are fantastic films that are, that are like Citizen Kane, better than Citizen Kane or whatever film you value. They're all sort of kind of cheesy. Some are better made than others, but it's just that we enjoy them.
Right.
That's all.
Right. Yeah, there's a difference between is this a good movie or is this just a movie that is enjoyable?
Right.
Because you can enjoy a bad movie,
Yeah.
and but that doesn't make it a good movie. It just means you enjoyed it
Right.
for what it
Exactly.
is. And that's what we're
Yeah.
doing here is just enjoying these for what they are.
Yeah. All those early slashers that we were talking about at the beginning of the episode, that's you can enjoy them. They are certainly not great movies.
No.
Okay, another one that I really like, and I saw this one for the first time last year, but I didn't really have enough time to prepare it for our episode 28. And I watched it again this year. Last year, I watched the theatrical cut, and this year I watched the director's cut, which is a little bit longer, and I liked it a little bit better. I usually like director's cuts a little bit better. It's called Anna and the Apocalypse, and this came out in 2017. And this is again to fit in with our theme of mashups. Um, this starts off as like an angsty teen musical for the first 20 minutes, right? And at finally at I think it's the 21-minute mark, we see our first zombie. And you're thinking, wait a second, what? I thought this was like a Christmas musical, angsty about angsty teens. And it is, but then it turns into a really, really well done zombie movie. So having that balance of the way they sold it in the advertisements, they said it was marketed as Shaun of the Dead meets La La Land.
Hmm.
Um, me, La La Land's great, but it's about adults. So if I had to remarket it, I would say that it was Shaun of the Dead meets Dear Evan Hansen, which I believe Dear Evan Hansen, the film came out in 2021, but it was on stage by 2017.
Mhm.
And because it's a musical about angsty teenagers, it actually fits a little bit better in sort of like a remarketing campaign that they could do. But Anna obviously is the main character, and she wants to take a year off before she goes to uni, because that's what we call it here in Jolly Old uni. And she wants to travel. She wants to go to Australia, which they never say, but it's implied that her mother's Australian. This is set in Scotland. Um, and if you're an AC/DC fan, of course, you know that many Scottish people immigrated to Australia at some point. Yay, AC/DC. Rock and roll, as you say, all the time. There you go. And it is just also the characters, nobody phoned it in. And the filmmakers really wanted fresh faces, people that nobody would know. So you see them here for the first time, really just acting their hearts out. This is just about passion and really conveying teenage angst and wanting relationships, whether they're romantic or family relationships to work out.
Mhm.
And all of it is set around Christmas time. At the school they're preparing for the annual Christmas concert, and we get to see some of it, and it's awful what some of the kids do. You might think Mean Girls, that section that is set around the Christmas concert, but it's far, far worse what the kids are capable of doing. And then it just everything blows up. The world blows up, and we get to see zombies. We actually get to see a zombified Santa Claus.
Hmm.
They mentioned early on in the film that the local Santa is suffering from some type of flu, and then we see him later on, and he's a zombie. So if you want to see murderous Santas or John Wick style Santas or zombie Santas, this is the watch list for you.
Now, is this whole movie a musical or does it just
Does it
have
feature like
musical?
a song here and there? No, the whole thing is a musical. I believe
Wow.
there's 16 songs,
Wow.
and some of them are just really, really well made. Obviously, we talk about our age all the time. We don't know High School Musical, but I also saw some comparisons to that. So if you're familiar with that series
Hmm.
where people just break off into song, and of course they're in high school, I think preparing for a musical because that's what it sounds like, even though I've never seen it. That's what happens. So there's opening numbers and it goes throughout the whole thing. There's this one great sequence um, that's set in the cafeteria that's called Hollywood Ending. And Anne is going on about, because she's angsty, that there are no Hollywood endings. And the big question that you have to say, that you have to ask yourself, because it's, I think it's the second or third song in the film, is there going to be a Hollywood ending to this? You know, so it's sort of foreshadowing
Hmm.
what type of film it's really going to be. And I'm not going to spoil it, you know. So I mean, if you can stand musicals, and I know some people that's just not their thing, it's probably not the best thing for you. But if you like musicals and you like zombie films, and I like both, of course, this movie really, really stands out to me, and I really love this movie as well. Some of the inspirations that the filmmakers talk about are of course Shaun of the Dead and Dawn of the Dead, Night of the Living Dead, but also then something like West Side Story is thrown in there. It's like, oh my god! So I think this is a true mashup, and it's brilliantly, brilliantly done. This is another one. You haven't seen these two. I would say if you're gonna watch one of them, it should be Anna and the Apocalypse.
I'm gonna watch both. This one I passed on because yeah, I love zombie movies. Love The Walking Dead. Love, I mean, first couple of seasons anyway, but love zombie movies, but I'm not really musical type person. I mean, I'm a musical person, but I don't like
Right, we're
musicals.
musicians and things
We're
like that. We love
musicians, but
music.
yeah, but I just don't really like musicals. And again, I was in a time crunch and I said, all right, I could watch, I got like through three of the movies and I was like, I could do one more. Which one am I going to do? And from what you're saying, I probably chose poorly. Uh,
He chose poorly.
you chose poorly.
Yeah, you did it wicked
Uh,
better than I did. For any of you Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade fans out there, Harrison Ford for life.
How come you don't do a British accent yet? You're living out there in England for so long.
Oh,
Well, you're
I
still
think
talking American English there.
it would be offensive to the people here, so
That would.
I don't want to offend them because I love the accent so much.
Bloody Yank.
Now, of course, when we're now being recorded, I do it all the time.
Yes.
But if this shows up sometime, it's like, why were you talking like that? And it's like, no, no, I'm not going to do that. I love all accents of how people speak English. You know, wherever you're, Australia, India, England, um, the South, the United States, whatever. Any way that you speak English, I'm into it because I love it. So I'm not going to disgrace the friends here and jolly old. I could not do that to them.
All right, I can do it over here in the safety of America.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, you're safe over there.
Bloody peasants. I'm 37. What? You said old man. I'm 37. I'm sorry. We're going off on a tangent here.
No, no, it was old woman. It's being
Old woman,
played by a
yes.
man.
Yes, yes. My name's Dennis.
Dennis.
I didn't know that. Well, you didn't bother to ask, did you?
Oh, Dennis. And then they oppressed Dennis.
I'm being oppressed. All right.
Monty
Uh,
Python and the Holy
Monty
Grail, if you don't
Python.
know, just in
Yeah.
case.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think this last one, it really does depend. If you can't really stomach musicals, this is not for you. But there were some things as far as zombie horror, and we want to do an episode about zombies, just dedicated to zombies, the actual science of it and the history of zombies, as well as films. And that's going to come up whenever whenever we
Yeah.
get a chance to do it.
Yeah, definitely.
But there's like some really, really good zombie moments in this film, and homages very specifically to I would say Day of the Dead uh, from 1985, George Romero's Day of the Dead, not the remake, the original,
Mhm.
where one of the characters um, suffers a very gruesome death at the hands of many, many zombies, which they very clearly replicated in this film to great effect. I think if you watch it on Amazon, you actually see it. So I
Mhm.
feel That's not really too much of a spoiler because you can't really avoid it if you're going to watch it on streaming services.
Okay.
But it's a fantastic zombie film. You could even like turn the sound off and just watch it for zombie horror.
Yeah, I mean, if I had more time, I would have watched it. It was just we're coming up to the recording time, and I was like, all right, I got to kind of whittle this list down.
Oh yeah, of
So
course.
yeah, definitely give it a watch. Maybe even
Yeah, even
tonight.
me. I mean, I was up until 1 o'clock in the morning curating the list and writing up my notes and things like that. So I only got 5 hours of sleep last night because
Sorry.
it. No, no, no. I mean, any excuse I get to watch movies and talk about movies, I'm happy. So I'll catch up on my. I actually took a nap, like an hour nap before filming this, so I feel much fresher now,
Oh,
and I'll
good,
get some
good.
sleep tonight.
Yeah,
Whatever.
yeah,
All
yeah.
right, so now there's one film left on our list, and we have to go. I would call this a classic, The Legend of Hell House. And this was written by Richard Matheson. And we were talking about Richard Matheson. He's most well known for writing the book I Am Legend, which got turned into The Last Man on Earth, and um, the film I Am Legend with Will Smith. And what's that other adaptation?
Omega Man.
Omega Man. Yeah, thank you. The 70s
Yeah.
version. Oh my God, that is something to see. He's also written episodes for The Twilight Zone. What is it called? 20,000 Feet. I
Oh,
forget the
Terror,
names.
Terror at
Yeah,
20,000
or
feet,
yeah, something like that.
something like
Here,
that. The William Shatner
so
one.
right.
There's a
I
man on the
mean,
wing of the plane.
great episode.
Oh, it's awesome. Yeah.
And Shatner does. I mean, Shatner's a legend.
Shatner
We
doing
can
Shatner.
poke fun at him all we want, and he's still Captain Kirk and a badass. And
Oh,
he's
totally, totally.
always gonna be that.
Love
Always.
William Shatner. Love William Shatner.
He's just fantastic. So I think Legend of Hell House is really the odd man out in this one because um, unless you look at the titles that they give you, uh, the first shot that you see it says December 17th, and they give you the time, and then it's December 18th, and it goes all the way up to December 24th, and they always love to include the time, like 6:41 matters. It's like who cares what time it is?
Yeah.
But fine. I mean, if that's what you wanted to include in your film, that's fine. So unless you actually look at the dates, this has absolutely no Christmas feel at all. There are no decorations. And it's basically, let me tell you the premise. A millionaire challenges four people to prove the existence of an afterlife by spending a week in a reportedly haunted house. If you think this sounds like The House on Haunted Hill from 1959, directed by William Castle, or The Haunting, 1963, directed by Robert Wise, the great Robert Wise, who, of course, directed Shatner in Star Trek The Motion Picture, you are not wrong. I mean, what separates these movies? And that's an interesting thing to think about because all of them have a very similar premise, but they all have their own really unique personality. And they are separated. One is from the 50s, one is from the 60s, one is from the 70s. So filming styles, editing, scoring, all those things. You get a different look at the prototypical haunted house genre. And we did a whole haunted house episode. What episode was that? That was episode 69, I think.
Uh, sorry. Let me pull it up. I'm being a child here. Of course, all my tabs are closed. I will link to it down below. I forget what it was off the top of my head, but that sounds about right.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that it was episodes 69, haunted house and ghost movies,
Hmm.
our favorites. I think yeah, that was the title. And again, I didn't include this one at that point because I wanted to save it for this episode because it's sort of you can't deny it because the dates are up on the screen. It's like, oh, well, this is set during the week before Christmas. So I mean, I guess it sort of qualifies.
Yeah, and
But it's the one that has the least Christmas feel to it.
yeah, if you were not paying attention to the captions at the bottom, you would have no, because yeah, it's just these four people inside an old haunted house that no one has lived in for a long time. So there's no decorations, there's no Christmas music. And we mentioned this off air. It was kind of like Return of the Living Dead, which we did for our 4th of July episode,
Yeah.
which again, unless you looked at the caption when the movie opens that tells you what the day is, that it's Independence Day, you would
Right. You
never
would
know
never
that that
know.
movie was July 4th. There's nothing with fireworks or like, and you'd think like, well, maybe at the end they're going to like bust out some fireworks and kill the zombies with fireworks, and 4th of
That would
July
be an
will be
amazing film.
right. 4th of July would somehow be incorporated into this because otherwise, what does it matter that
Right.
this is on the 4th of July? It really doesn't. And yeah, this film makes a point of showing you that this is happening before Christmas. And I think the final thing happens. Was it Christmas Day or Christmas Eve? I forget if it was the
It was
24th.
Christmas Eve at right before the sun went down. It was sort of late in the day, Christmas Eve,
Right. So it happens
and
right
then
around
then
Christmas,
it ends. Yeah.
but they never mention Christmas. There's no decorations, there's no music, there's no snow
Right.
outside.
In Return of the Living Dead, they sort of mentioned it. It's sort of throwaway lines by two characters, just really quick, like
Hmm.
blink and you'll miss it type of thing. Here, none of the characters mention it. That it's
Yeah.
Christmas time. No mention of it at all. Like you would never know if you just have it on in the background because you've seen it before. You would completely miss the dates and the times and things like that. Or if you're sort of watching it and not really, you just look away. Again, another blink and you'll miss it. It's like, oh, this is set on Christmas or right before Christmas. But it's such a good film. I really, really love it. It stars Roddy McDowell from Planet of the Apes and Fright Night. So I dig it. I'm into it. Haunted house movies.
Yeah, and it's pretty again, like you said, there's those elements of the haunting, there's elements of the haunting of Hill House, where in that movie it's Vincent Price and he pays people to spend the night in the haunted house, and haunting of Hill House, it's four people staying in the house to sort of prove or disprove that it's haunted before it's sold. Uh, so again, you have the same thing here. You have the four people spending nights in this haunted house and having experiences, and uh, I liked it. You know, it's got a lot of those things that we liked about like The Haunting, where it's more about what you hear than what you see.
Right.
It's more about what's implied than what is shown. But there is a little bit more of the gratuitous, if you will, than those previous movies. Which again, Vincent Price, The Haunting of Hill House. I forget what year that was.
That was 1959.
Okay,
The House on Haunted Hill. Is that the one
House
you're
on
talking
Haunted
about?
Hill. That's yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry.
with Vincent Price. Yeah,
Yes. Um,
1959. That's the same year that Shirley Jackson actually released the novel, The Haunting of Hill House, which was adapted 4 years later.
okay.
So,
So
and I'm having some difficulty. Like, how did they come up with such a similar premise? And I guess it's like entertainment circles, Hollywood. You hear things, it's like, oh, that would make a good book or a good film, and then people just run with it.
mhm.
And they're very similar, but in their own ways, very unique as well.
Yeah. So this one has those elements to it, but again, a little bit more gratuitous in the sensuality, some nudity,
Yeah, that does come up.
because it's this one is the 70s, so now you can kind of talk about this stuff a little bit more. Whereas, like we said, like in The Haunting, there's hints, very, very
Right.
veiled hints at like lesbian love interests.
Yeah.
Whereas in this one, they just come out and talk about like cannibalism and bestiality and um,
Sadism, all sorts of like
sadism,
really dark things.
like really dark things. And there's some scenes, like I said, there's some nudity, there's some um, scenes of sexuality where people are
And it's still
possessed.
only
And
rated PG. I think it's the only rated PG film on this entire list. Else is rated R.
hmm,
So it's not overt the way that modern audiences think of those things. But it certainly is there, and not as subtle, of course, as it was in The Haunting. So it's sort of middle ground, I think, and the '70s sort of pushed that. I think more than ever before. Hammer Studios certainly did that. We need to do our Hammer Studios episode.
yeah, because the Haunting and House on Haunted Hill uh, both alluded to like abuse and perhaps sexual abuse.
Yeah,
And again, the haunting had like a sort of a proto lesbian love interest
kind of
sort of thing
character.
going
Yeah,
on. But again, these things were like really, really vague and merely hinted at. And again, because I think in the haunting they talk about oh God, I forget his name, but the guy who owned the house and he was like, I guess very abusive and
yeah. No, I forget his name right now too.
it's
Yeah,
like on the tip of my tongue. God. But those things were alluded to. And in this film, like Roddy McDowall just kind of comes out and talks about, yeah, sadism and bestiality and cannibalism and all of these
yeah.
like really
Really dark
dark.
things.
Yeah, so it's not gratuitous sex or anything, but it's
No,
definitely more in your face than those previous entries.
yeah. And this is based on Richard Matheson, as I said at the beginning, was the writer of the screenplay, but it's based on his book called Hell House. And apparently, in his book, which I haven't read, full disclosure, you actually get to see those things, in full detail. So
Oh wow.
they had to sort of downplay it in the film
Hmm.
because it's still in the 70s. I think if they filmed it now, they could definitely go full bore and explore all those things, and you can actually visually see those things,
Hmm.
which might appeal to a more modern audience. I was actually watching another channel called the Cobwebs channel, and this caught my eye because we did this episode, the one that we were talking about, episode 69, and then I see his episode. It's called the top 20 best haunted house movies. I was like, hey, we just did an episode just like that. And he did it, and he mentions The Haunting, and he actually talks about something that we talked about, saying that in 1963 in The Haunting, you don't see anything. And as opposed to the remake in 1999, where you see everything. And one of his criticisms, and I think that's why it was a 15, was that you don't get to see anything.
Hmm.
So it kind of depends on the person and the audience. Do you want to see something or do you not want to see something? Do you want to leave it up to your imagination and what it is that scares you? Or do you just want it like a jump scare in your face type of thing? So it might depend on the person, it might depend on your mood. I would say the Legend of Hell House is sort of in between because it's definitely you don't really see anything either in the House on Haunted Hill or The Haunting. Here you do see stuff, and it's apparently more stuff was included, and so they could sort of just only mention it and sort of flirt with it.
Hmm.
But it definitely does not feel like Christmas.
No, and that's the one criticism. Like
Yeah,
it's a good movie. It's a good haunted house movie. All the actors are good. I mean, Roddy McDowell is
but
Roddy,
always,
always good. He's Roddy
always good.
McDowell. Um, the performances are good. The cinematography is really good. I mean, the whole
Oh, I
thing is
really like the cinematography, by the way. If you're into that, this is the film for you.
yeah,
It has all sorts of weird angles and
oh yeah,
wide shots, and I mean, it's just beautiful to look at. Filmed
but
at real locations as well. It's not sets.
right, but has nothing to do with Christmas other than the captions.
Yeah, I mean, they like you could do a fan version and just have it in the weeks leading up to Halloween, or the week leading up to Easter, or pick any holiday and you would never know it.
Yeah,
This one just happens to be Christmas.
right. And it's just an odd choice because they do put the captions there, like you said, every day, every time the time changes. It's like, oh, it's December 17th at 11 a.m. and then it's December 17th at 3:06 p.m. and
Yeah, like the same day they'll put the date again at it for a different time.
right. So it's that they're really making this effort to let you know what day and time it is, and yet they don't reference it. It has no bearing on the movie. There's no reason for it where you later in the movie you say, oh, okay, this happened on December
Yeah, no,
24th, and that's why they tied it all together. It just goes nowhere, and it's point like it just didn't need those captions at all. So it takes place during Christmas, but you'd never know it. So not a
yeah.
Christmas movie.
Right. That's one of the reasons that I held off last time, and that's one of the reasons that we're talking about it right now because it's definitely a haunted house movie. I don't think it's a Christmas movie,
Yeah. All right.
but
Cool.
still a
Still
really
good.
enjoyable movie.
Yeah. If you like haunted house movies and you want
If
to be
that's your
scared
jam,
and
this is it.
yeah, jump scares and more subtle scares and just good acting and just you know, creepy 70s vibe with that type of music and that type of acting and
The type of lighting,
that type of lighting. The
it's a
lighting
very
is,
particular thing. It's like, oh, this is clearly from the 70s.
yeah. And I love that stuff. I could put that
Yeah,
on at
same.
night and just kind of watch that all night. So,
Yeah, no,
yeah.
it's weird for a scary movie. There's something really cozy about all those different elements. You just put it in at night and it's like,
Hmm.
you watch
Yeah.
the movie, it's like, this is a good movie. And
Yeah. And I
get a
feel
little
like,
scared and you look around and hmm,
yeah, and the modern horror movies don't really do that for me. They don't have that,
no.
there's almost like that hiss in the background. Like even when it's quiet, there's just a,
Yeah,
like from the sound
yeah,
and the graininess of the footage just lends it this sort of creepy, when things are too crystal clear like that,
yeah.
it loses something. So,
Yeah, that you talked a lot about that in the Bigfoot episode about Boggy Creek. The one that you saw was like probably recorded off of television,
yeah.
right? And then years old. So it looks like almost like found footage. Um, but yeah, and these modern films just don't have that. They'll never have that sort of feel. But depending on the upgrade on the remaster of some of these other films, you can still feel it,
Hmm.
but it's also a little bit cleaner, so you can also enjoy it for how it's shot and lit and all these things.
Right, right. All right.
So
Well,
that's our list.
that's our list. So before we go, we said we were going to talk about Die Hard. So real quick, is Die Hard a Christmas movie or not? Because this is a huge debate and people
Oh,
will fight to the death about this.
oh yeah, I know. I'm kind of afraid for your audience and the type of comments that you're going to get. All right, so my daughter just turned 13, and I'm not going to lie, we probably have sheltered her because she's a young woman living in New York City, and she's our only child. Um, so we waited to let her watch PG-13 films, until this year. We didn't get her a phone until this year. And I know that Die Hard is rated R, but we sort of kind of pushed the envelope a little bit because she's super, super mature. Growing up with me as her dad, she's going to be like serious and who knows else. And her mom, of course, also very serious and, whatever. We're very much into opera and very serious things. So we let her watch it, and she was a little bit bored by it. And I'm like, oh my God, this movie's amazing. And the girls decided that it is definitely not a Christmas movie. I mean, there was like just no doubt in their minds. This is not a Christmas movie. And seeing that one, I wish it had more decorations. And my wife used to live out in California, and she used to live in Hawaii for a time. And I asked her, it's like, how is it there for the holidays? And she says, it's just like here, except with nice weather. So she says that it doesn't need to be cold
Hmm.
like it is here to feel like Christmas because of all the decorations. So people have the trees. And that's why, I was thinking about To All a Good Night, filmed in Santa Barbara. It's unacceptable that you have like one string of lights. It's like you really could have done this better. And in Die Hard, I wish they had decorated more. I mean, the most of the building is empty, except for the Christmas party. So there's a Christmas party, and they do have a Christmas tree and some decorations. But even I just threw in Die Hard right before Die Hard 2, and it's everything is snowy. And like we said before, there's snowmobiles. Like it has more of a Christmas feel than the first one. And no
Hmm.
one ever talks about the second one being a Christmas movie. So that might start a few fights in the comment section right now. So hopefully not, but it might. So I think the two of them, just like with the Legend of Hell House, it's set around Christmas time. I guess it sort of qualifies for that, uh, but doesn't really feel like that. So some people will not be satisfied with that answer,
Yeah, and I
but I
get it
give
because
answers like that.
yeah, and it becomes, well, what makes a Christmas movie a Christmas movie?
Yeah,
Like, does it have to be specifically about Christmas? Does it just have to take place on Christmas? Is there a message in there? And I think with Die Hard, like he's trying to get to his family for Christmas.
yeah,
So for me, it's a Christmas movie. Barely.
yeah,
I mean, it's not about Jesus Christ or Santa or, but I think at heart, this is just a blue collar guy coming from New York, wants to see his family for Christmas, and this bad thing happens on Christmas, and he's the reluctant hero and has got to save his family. And at the end, he gets to go home with his wife and see his kids for Christmas. So for me,
Spoiler alert. Yeah,
well, again, yeah.
it's been out for
But now,
almost
yeah, if you
40
haven't seen
years.
Die Hard yet, um,
Yeah, you need to.
you need to. And there's a Die Hard too, so you kind of figured that he makes it to the end, you know?
Die Hard 2, Die Harder.
Yeah, and then what, like four Die
In
Hards
Return
or
of the
five Die
sequel.
Hards? There was a bunch of them. So
There's five. I'm not a
yeah,
big fan of number five, by the way. I do like all of them. Uh, three and four don't have anything to do with Christmas.
yeah,
So
yeah. It's really
it
the
kind of
first
depends
two.
on what it is that you're looking for.
Yeah. But me
Yeah.
personally, I say just barely, but I think it does
Yeah.
make it as a Christmas movie.
I think it should always be in the conversation,
Yeah,
whether it is or it isn't.
right.
Fine. You have your opinion. I don't know that there's a right or wrong answer because it's your opinion.
Oh, there clearly isn't, but to me, it's a Christmas movie.
Yeah.
I would rather watch Die Hard like in December than in like June.
Yeah, exactly. And we just honestly we just watched it last week. So I
Yeah,
mean, we're watching it for Christmas to determine if it's a Christmas film. So it should be part of the conversation for sure.
yeah, definitely.
And then you feel how you feel.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
All right, brother. That was awesome. So thank you. That was a
Thank
good
you for
lit.
having me on again.
Yeah, anytime. It's been a hot minute. So glad to have you back. I've been doing
Yeah.
a lot of solo episodes and
Which
just
I've been
because
watching. You've been doing great. I really
yeah,
like your episodes. They're very interesting.
thank you. Thank you.
And I'm not usually into Bigfoot stories or things about UFOs and things like that, but there's a lot of interesting stories out there. And I
there
really
are
just enjoyed last week's with the Christmas stories. All of that stuff is interesting to me. So
yeah, I try to mix it up, try to keep it interesting and try to give a little something for everybody. But people tend to love the Bigfoot stuff. I know you don't really, but those are like the highest rated episodes, like the Bigfoot
people do
stuff.
love
Just
the Bigfoot episodes.
yeah,
Yeah.
those people go crazy for those. So have to do a Bigfoot episode again soon. Sorry.
Yeah. No, don't apologize. I mean, I really like those episodes too. And
Yeah.
I never thought that I would, but it's like, oh, this is actually very interesting.
Yeah. All right. Well, we will have you on again. Like you said, we have other movie genres to talk about, zombies and vampires
Werewolves,
and werewolves and
vampires. Oh my. So many things to talk about. Yeah.
yes, exactly. So, all right, brother. So have a Merry Christmas. I'm going to see
Yes.
you in a few days,
Merry
actually.
Christmas. Yeah.
When
We're
this
gonna get
airs,
together.
we'll already have seen each other. So
Oh yeah. What a strange thought.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
All right. That'll be cool. I can't
yes.
wait.
Yeah. Very cool. All right, brother. Thanks again. This was
Thank
awesome.
you.
And
Yeah.
we will have you on again soon.
All right. Thank you. Take
All right.
care.
Take care, man.
Bye.
Bye. All right. I want to thank my buddy John for coming on once again, talking Christmas horror movies again, Christmas movies of the spooky kind. Less mainstream this year, more deep dive this year. Some of the movies weren't that great, but I like them on that cheesy level. So they're all recommended, just some more than others. And I'm going to wrap it up there tonight, everybody. So happy holidays, Merry Christmas, I'll see you before the new year, but Happy New Year regardless. And rock and roll, everybody. Till next time.